She hid the ultrasound inside a cream leather clutch. Her hand never left her stomach. Hannah Reed is 23, black, quietly elegant, 7 weeks pregnant. She married into one of the most feared families in Seoul, and today she carries a small ivory box across a marble portico she still doesn't feel she belongs to. Beside her walks Kang Min-jae, 30, a Korean mafia heir. The men in the streets call him Ash. On the right side of his neck, a black ink koi fish swims upward, a single red dot on its eye, the Kang family mark. Waiting under the double staircase stands his mother, Kang Mi-suk, ivory silk, gray pearls, the warmest smile Hannah has seen in months. She kisses her daughter-in-law on the cheek. She calls her, my daughter. For one heartbeat, Hannah believes her. Then the coffee is served, the vitamins are found, and Mi-suk asks Hannah to follow her, alone, into the kitchen. She dismisses every servant in the house. Min-jae hears the order from the hallway. He knows his mother has never dismissed the staff before. Silently, he slips into the pantry beside the kitchen. He leaves the door open just a crack, and what he hears in the next 4 minutes will unmake everything he thought he knew about the woman who raised him. Before starting the story, comment down below where you are watching from and what time it is there. If stories of karma, love, and hidden truths move you, leave a like, be sure to subscribe to the channel, and click join to become a member and help our channel. The black sedan slowed the last 100 meters, as if the driver himself sensed something waiting under the marble portico. Hannah felt the deceleration in her stomach before she felt it in her seat. She pressed one palm flat over her belly. The belly was still flat too, only she and Min-jae knew what lived there. Breathe, Min-jae said. He said it without looking at her. His hand found her knee under the ivory hem of her dress. I am breathing. Slower. She obeyed. The sedan curved along the gravel loop and glided beneath the columns. 2 rows of stone pines lined the drive, clipped so evenly they looked painted. Somewhere behind the mansion, a fountain worked. Water on stone. Hannah counted the rhythm of it to steady her pulse. The clutch on her lap weighed almost nothing. A cream leather rectangle the size of a book. Inside, an ivory box the size of her palm, and inside that, a small ultrasound printout folded around a handwritten note. The note was for Mi-suk. Hannah had rewritten it 4 times last week at the kitchen table of the apartment she and Min-jae still kept in the city. Every version came out wrong, until she stopped trying to impress and simply told the truth. Grandmother, baby, please love him. The driver stopped. Min-jae opened his own door before the driver could reach it. Wait, Hannah said. He waited. She looked at him across the leather seat. His 3-piece suit still creased sharp at the shoulder from the tailor. Jet black hair combed back low. Along the right side of his neck, the koi tattoo climbed toward the collarbone. A single red dot on the eye that no stranger ever noticed, and no member of his family ever forgot. Since the day she met him, she had understood the koi meant more than art. Tonight, it meant something else again. Whatever she says today, Hannah said, don't lose your temper. I never lose my temper. You almost did in June. June was different. Today is different too. He held her eye. His expression did not soften. It only pulled inward, the way it did when he processed a thing he refused to argue with. Then he came around and opened her door himself. The marble portico stretched over her like a low ceiling of light. 2 staff in dark uniforms stood back from the entrance, hands folded. Boknam waited at the top of the shallow stone steps, salt and pepper hair pulled into her low bun, white linen apron, warm brown eyes that found Hannah first and stayed there half a beat longer than protocol allowed. Miss Hannah. Boknam. Boknam bent slightly. Her hands did not know what to do, so they folded neatly at her waist. She said something quiet to Min-jae in Korean. He answered even more quietly. Whatever passed between them made the older woman's shoulders drop half an inch and rise again. Hannah understood the drop. Boknam had raised Minjae from 10. Boknam saw everything in this house. They climbed the 6 steps. The double doors opened before they touched them. Inside, the entrance hall opened into the great curved rotunda Hannah still could not look at without holding her breath. 2 staircases climbed left and right in perfect symmetry and met on a landing above. A chandelier hung from the dome. Between the 2 staircases stood Mi-suk. The mother-in-law wore ivory silk, blouse tailored to her waist, mandarin collar buttoned to the base of the throat, dove gray ankle-length skirt. A single strand of gray South Sea pearls sat at her neck. Her hair was chignoned so cleanly it looked lacquered. She was 58 and could have been 40 from certain angles and 70 from others, depending on what she was thinking. Tonight her face was doing something Hannah had not seen in 10 months. She was smiling. Not the trained smile, not the diplomat smile, the other one, the one that lifted her cheekbones a full centimeter and cracked 2 fine lines at the corner of each eye. "My daughter," Mi-suk said. She walked to Hannah with both hands open, small hands, dry, cool. She took Hannah's face between them and kissed the space between her eyebrows. It was the kiss she reserved for kin. "You came." "Of course I came." Come out of that hallway. It is drafty." She took Hannah's hand and did not let go. She took Minjae's arm with the other. She walked them both down the corridor toward the sitting room, the way a mother walks her children into a room she has spent a week preparing. Minjae met Hannah's eyes over the top of his mother's head. His mouth did not move, but something in his shoulders loosened. Hannah read the loosening. She had been reading her husband's body since the 2nd date. Loosening meant maybe this time. Loosening meant perhaps she meant it. Hannah smiled back at him. She did not let her own shoulders loosen. She had learned. 12 months of dinners and gifts and quiet excursions and warm hands on her cheek. 12 months of Mi-suk praising her English and her walk and her taste and her cooking and, once, her laugh. 12 months and always, on the drive home, Minjae would say, "See, she is coming around," and Hannah would say, "Yes, my love," and she would look out the window at the passing lights and count how many times Mi-suk had actually said the word wife in her presence. 0. Not once in 12 months had Kang Mi-suk, matriarch of the Kang line, used the word wife when referring to Hannah in Hannah's hearing. "Daughter, my daughter, come daughter, warm as bread, but never wife." Hannah had noticed the omission in month 3. She had not told Minjae. She would not tell him today either. Some things a woman must simply keep on the shelf where she can see them. The sitting room glowed amber, a single low chandelier over a marble coffee table, cream sofas arranged in a shallow U, a silver tray already waited on the table, coffee in a heavy pot, 3 cups, small plates of yakwa and pine nut cookies. The steam from the pot rose in one thin, uninterrupted line. Mi-suk seated Hannah in the middle of the longest sofa. She sat beside her. Minjae took the armchair opposite. Boknam poured. Boknam left. The door clicked shut with the softness only a house of trained staff can produce. "You are thinner," Mi-suk said. Her eyes tracked Hannah's collarbones under the sweetheart neckline of the cream dress. "The city eats you." "I've been busy." "Busy with what?" Hannah balanced the coffee cup on her knee. She had rehearsed the answer. "The new studio. We opened last month. 2 clients already. The interior design. Yes. A hobby is important for a woman." The word hobby landed. Hannah did not react. She had trained for hobby. She had trained for a lot of words. She set the cup back on the tray without drinking. "It is a business, mother," Minjae said. "Even." "Of course." Mi-suk's hand found Hannah's hand. She squeezed once and released. She turned her whole body toward Hannah on the sofa. The pearls at her throat shifted with the movement. "I asked you both here," she said, "because I want to begin again." Hannah waited. I know I have been slow. I know you both feel it. Misuk glanced at her son and back to Hannah. A mother of my generation carries stones in her pockets. I have been trying to empty mine. I have not been fast enough. That is my fault. Mother, let me finish, Minjae. He stopped. I want to tell you, Hannah, that I see you. I see how you carry yourself in this house. I see how you love my son. I want to be the mother-in-law you deserve. She took Hannah's hand again. This time she kept it. Whatever comes, whatever plans you and Minjae have, I want to be part of them. Not to steer, to support. The smile did not falter. The lines at her eyes stayed alive. Hannah felt the tears begin at the back of her throat and stopped them before they climbed. She had wanted this speech for a year. She had rewritten this speech in her head 100 times, always in Misuk's voice, and here it was, arriving in the real voice, on the real evening, at the exact table where she had once been asked, politely, whether black women were often photographed for magazines. She squeezed Misuk's hand back. Once, careful. Thank you. Do not thank me. Thanking is a beginning. I want the middle. Misuk laughed at her own joke. Minjae laughed too, surprised, the sound coming out a little rusty from the throat of a man who had not laughed at his mother in a long time. Hannah laughed. She meant a portion of it. She set the clutch on the sofa beside her thigh. Her fingers stayed on the clasp. Misuk noticed the fingers, not the clutch, the fingers on the clasp. Her eyes registered the grip for the length of a heartbeat. Then she looked back at Hannah's face and the smile widened. She poured a second coffee she did not need and passed the small plate of yakwa closer to Hannah's knee. Eat something. You have such a long drive. I'm fine. Try one for me. Hannah took a yakwa, sweet honey, sesame. She ate half of it, because refusing would draw attention, and she was already drawing attention with the way her hand would not leave the clutch. She released the clasp. She set the clutch on her lap instead. She used both hands to hold the cookie. She kept smiling. Minjae watched. He did not know yet what he was watching. He knew there was a note under the surface of the room, like a wire under carpet. He assumed the note was his mother's, unresolved, still tuning. He put his coffee down. He leaned forward on his knees. Mother, he said, this means a great deal to both of us. I know it does. We came here today because... Hannah touched his wrist. Not now, not yet. Misuk's eyes traced the touch. She smiled through it. Because, she said. Because Hannah and I wanted to spend an evening with you, Minjae said. Smooth. That is all. Then we will make it a beautiful evening. Misuk lifted her cup. The other two lifted theirs. She sipped. So did they. The room settled into a low warmth Hannah did not entirely trust, and could not, at that instant, refuse. She let the warmth reach her ribs. She let it soften the wire in her shoulders half a turn. She let Minjae take her free hand across the small distance between sofa and armchair and press her knuckles to his mouth once, and she let his mother watch him do it, and she let herself believe, for a stretch of 30 seconds, that maybe the ivory box in her clutch would open tonight into open arms. 30 seconds is a long time inside a woman's chest. Then Misuk stood. I want to show you something, she said. Both of you, come. She walked ahead of them out of the sitting room and down the long corridor lined with black and white photographs of Kang men, generation stacked on generation, each frame identical, each face similar enough that Hannah had once, in a private moment, thought about how her own son would look in that row, and had put the thought away, because thinking it too soon felt like tempting something. She thought it again now, walking behind Misuk, and this time she did not put it away. Minjae's hand found the small of her back. He kept it there the whole corridor. Misuk led them into the east drawing room. She opened a lacquered cabinet and drew out a photograph album so old the leather had gone soft as skin. She sat down at the low table. She patted the cushion beside her. Hannah sat. "This," Mi-suk said, opening the album, "is my grandmother, and this is my mother at 3 years old. And this," she turned the page, "is Min-jae the day he came home from the hospital. I was 28. I did not know how to hold him. I held him wrong for 6 days." Hannah looked. A tiny bundled shape in a tired young woman's arms. The tired young woman had Mi-suk's cheekbones and none of her armor. "He was small," Hannah said. "He was so small." Hannah's finger hovered above the page. She wanted to touch the baby foot. She wanted, more precisely, to touch the corner of the photograph where a young Mi-suk was smiling, like a woman who had not yet chosen sides in her own life. She held back. The album was not hers to touch yet. She let her hand return to her lap. "He came out silent," Mi-suk said. 10 minutes. No cry. The doctor slapped him twice. Then he opened his mouth and screamed for 4 hours. She smiled at the memory. He decides when he speaks. Even then. Behind them, Min-jae's thumb stopped moving on his mother's shoulder. "I remember that story differently," he said. "You were not there, my love." "I was very much there." Hannah laughed softly. The laugh surprised her. It came out warm, it came out unguarded. She heard it leave her mouth, and she felt, for one instant, the small door in her chest crack open again, the way doors do when a stranger's kindness lands unexpectedly on a raw place. She closed the door herself. Gently, she kept the smile. Mi-suk turned another page. She kept turning. She narrated in a low voice. Min-jae stood behind the sofa, with his hand on his mother's shoulder, and one thumb absently brushing the fabric there. Hannah watched him watch his mother, and felt her own eyes fill, and did not blink so nothing would fall. The clutch sat on Hannah's lap. Her fingers rested on the clasp again without her deciding. She noticed only when Mi-suk, mid-sentence, glanced down at the clutch and back up at Hannah's eyes, and the glance was not the glance of 10 minutes ago. It was faster. It was measuring. Then it was gone. Then the smile again. Then the next page. "Look at his little foot," Mi-suk said. "Look at that little foot." Hannah looked at the little foot. Somewhere in her chest, quietly, without alarm, a small door she did not know she still had closed halfway. She kept her smile. She kept her hand on the clasp. Min-jae, behind them, did not see the door close. He saw only his mother's finger on a page, his wife's shoulder against her arm, and a photograph of himself in a hospital blanket, and he thought, for the first time in a year, that perhaps he had been wrong to prepare for war. He let his shoulders down. Outside, the fountain kept working, water on stone, the same rhythm as before, the same rhythm as always, indifferent to what any of them believed about the next hour. Mi-suk turned another page. "And here," she said, "is the room we always kept for the next child. It has been empty for 30 years. She looked at Hannah when she said it. Hannah did not look away. "It is a beautiful room," Mi-suk said. "I'm sure it is. Would you like to see it, later?" "Yes." "Good." Mi-suk closed the album gently. She rested one hand on the cover. She rested the other on Hannah's knee. "After coffee," she said, "you and I will take a small walk. Just us. There is a recipe I want to show you in the kitchen. A recipe my mother taught me. I want it to pass through you now." Hannah's fingers, of their own accord, tightened one more time on the clasp of the clutch, and then released it flat. "I would like that," she said. Behind them, Min-jae smiled. He did not know yet. None of them did. Not fully. Mi-suk slid her arm through Hannah's, the way older women slide a bookmark between pages, with the exact pressure that says the reading will continue in a moment, but not yet. She guided her back across the drawing room, past the album still open on the low table, and into the amber sitting room, where the coffee had been refreshed. Baknam had done it silently, new silver pot, fresh yakwa, the old cups taken away. Min-jae was already there, standing by the window that looked over the fountain. He turned when they came in, and something in his face relaxed one more notch. He had not smiled this much in a long time, and Hannah could see he was afraid to stop, as if stopping would break the thing. "Sit here, my daughter," Mi-suk said, and patted the middle of the sofa again, and Hannah sat. The clutch went to her side, against the cushion. Her hand did not leave the fastener. Mi-suk said. Mi-suk said. Her hand did not leave the fastener. Mi-suk said. Her hand did not leave the fastener. Mi-suk said. Mi-suk said. Her hand did not leave the fastener. Mi-suk lowered herself onto the sofa beside Hannah, half a body between them, close enough to reach for a hand. "There is something," Mi-suk said, and lifted the small silver spoon. "I would like to say properly, before the light goes." She poured a thin line of cream into her own cup. The spoon touched the porcelain once. She did not stir. "When my mother came into this house," she began, "she came with nothing, not a coin, not a name that anyone here would have recognized. My father's family looked at her for 8 years before they used the word wife." She smiled at the wall, as if the wall had been there for it. 8 years, Hannah, 8. Hannah felt her thumb move against the fastener without asking her permission. She stopped it. "I promised myself," Mi-suk said, "that I would not be the woman who did that to another woman. Not to any woman. Certainly not to the one my son loves." Min-jae exhaled through his nose. It was almost a laugh, almost relief. "But I want to speak to you," Mi-suk went on, "about lineage. Because our lineage is unusual. It is old and it is heavy, and it does not forgive being carried carelessly." The word lineage landed softly. Hannah kept her face still. "The Kang name has passed through 11 generations of only sons. 11. My husband was an only son. Min-jae is an only son. And in every generation, the mother of the heir was the one who kept the family upright when the men lost their patience." She turned to Hannah, then, fully, the pearls at her throat catching a piece of amber light. "That is what I want you to understand, not as a duty, as an inheritance." Min-jae shifted in the armchair. He wanted to speak. Hannah did not look at him. She held Mi-suk's gaze and gave her the smallest nod a person could give, and still be counted as agreeing. "I understand, mother." The word mother came out clean. She had practiced it 100 times in the car on the way here and once in the mirror this morning. It still cost her something small each time. Mi-suk covered Hannah's free hand with her own. The jade ring pressed cool against Hannah's knuckle. "Good," she said. "Good." Min-jae leaned forward. "Hannah's studio has 2 clients now, mother, the one on 5th, and a new one this week. Tell me about it." Hannah spoke about the second client, a restaurant renovation in Tribeca, muted brass, oxblood banquets, a long mirror behind the bar that would double the room without doubling the noise. She spoke slowly because she was watching Mi-suk's eyes the whole time, and Mi-suk's eyes were on her mouth for the first sentence, and then on the clutch for the second. Just for a beat, a single beat. Then back to her mouth. Hannah did not lose the thread of what she was saying. She adjusted her wrist and let the clutch tip sideways against the cushion, less visible from where Mi-suk sat. She spoke of the mirror. Min-jae did not see any of it. "That sounds like a real business," Mi-suk said, and the word real did not sound like an insult and did not sound like praise. It sounded like accounting. "It is," Min-jae said, quiet. "Then I will send you a client," Mi-suk said to Hannah. "A friend of mine is doing her country house. She has been complaining for a year. I think she will listen to a young woman with her own studio. If you would like the introduction." Hannah paused only long enough to receive it. "I would be grateful, mother." The introduction was a bridge. Any bridge from Mi-suk was a bridge to somewhere. Hannah accepted the bridge without asking where it led. Mi-suk sipped her coffee, set the cup down with no sound. Min-jae, my love, she said. Would you fetch me the small green folder from your father's study? The one on the second shelf. I want to show Hannah the photographs of the country house tonight. Min-jae stood. He hesitated 1/2 second. A man who had, for the first time in a year, been able to keep both women in the same room and did not want to leave them alone. It is on the second shelf? He asked. Second shelf, green cover. He nodded. He crossed the room. He touched Hannah's shoulder as he passed, 2 fingers, light, and Hannah felt the touch travel down to her stomach and settle there. The door closed behind him. Mi-suk did not speak for 4 seconds. She looked at the coffee. She looked at Hannah's face. She looked at Hannah's hand, still resting on the clutch. Your hand, she said. Hannah lifted her eyes. You have not let go of it since you sat down. Hannah lifted her hand off the clutch and placed it flat on her own knee, palm down, fingers relaxed. She smiled the small, polite smile she had rehearsed for board meetings, before board meetings had been her life. Habit, she said. I keep my sketchbook in it. I check the strap without thinking. Ah, Mi-suk, let the rest between them. Then she smiled, and the smile stretched all the way to her eyes. May I offer you a moment, Hannah? The powder room in the east wing is the closer one. Freshen up. The light in this room is not kind to any of us after the 3rd hour. Hannah felt the invitation clearly. It was not really an offer. Thank you, Mother, I would. She stood. The clutch came up with her hand. Mi-suk looked at the clutch. Hannah looked at Mi-suk looking at the clutch. Leave it, dear, Mi-suk said, and the voice was so light it almost drifted. Nothing walks off in this house, and your hands will be more comfortable. For a single breath, Hannah's fingers tightened on the leather. One breath. She felt the shape of the ivory box through the material. Square, small, the note wedged along the top. She thought, if I take it with me, I confirm what she already suspects. She thought, if I leave it, I hand her the key. The rest of the calculation happened in the same breath. Mi-suk had already moved a millimeter toward taking it herself. Refusal would be a signal. Refusal would be louder than the box. Hannah set the clutch down on the sofa cushion, in the exact space where her hip had been. I will not be long. Take your time. Hannah crossed the room at the pace of a woman who was not thinking about her clutch. She opened the door. She stepped into the corridor. She closed the door behind her with the same softness Boknam had used when she'd left the drawing room earlier. Then she walked. The east powder room was 2 doors past the second display cabinet. She reached it. She stepped inside. She locked the door. She braced both hands on the marble sink. She did not cry. She counted to 12. She looked at her own face in the mirror and told it the thing it needed to hear. Then she washed her hands, slowly, because the water was the only excuse she had to stay 1 more minute. Back in the sitting room, Mi-suk did not move for 6 seconds after the door clicked shut. She listened. Then she reached, casually, as if she had been meaning to move the coffee tray, and lifted the clutch by its strap. She set it on her lap. She opened it. The ivory box was the first thing she saw. Small, rectangular, the lid inlaid with a thin border of mother of pearl. A folded piece of thick cream paper wedged between the lid and the side of the box, the corner just showing. She almost lifted the lid. She did not. She recognized her own hunger and pulled her fingers back a centimeter. Not yet. Not before she knew what she was looking at. She moved her hand deeper into the clutch. Her fingertips found a smooth cylindrical bottle. She drew it out with 2 fingers. Amber plastic, pharmacy label, prescription typed in small, sober font. Hannah Reed, the date, 3 weeks ago, the name of the compound, prenatal complex, folate, iron, B12. Mi-suk's face did nothing at first. Nothing at all. She stared at the label for the length of 1 long breath. Then a slow contraction began at the corners of her mouth and traveled inward, and her lips went from the color of coffee cream to the color of bone. Her chest rose once, sharply, and did not fall for a beat longer than it should have. She set the bottle back exactly where it had been, in the same orientation, label facing the interior. She smoothed the leather closed over it. She sat with her hands in her lap and she counted, too. She counted higher than Hannah had. The clutch went back onto the cushion. Her hand went back to her cup. By the time Min-jae's steps sounded in the corridor, she was pouring cream a second time, and the smile she wore had returned to the exact place it had been when he'd left the room. Not a millimeter above, not a millimeter below. Only her right hand, resting on her own knee, was closed into a very small fist under the drape of the silk skirt where no one would see it. Min-jae came in first. Hannah followed a moment later. "Second shelf, mother," he said, holding out the green folder. "Behind the ledger." "Thank you, my love. Set it here." He put the folder on the coffee table. Hannah crossed to the sofa. She sat where she had been sitting. Her hand went to the clutch as she settled, and she felt the ivory box through the leather. Square, note in place, exactly as she had left it. She let out one soundless breath. Mi-suk watched her sit. "Better?" Mi-suk asked. "Much, thank you." "Good." Mi-suk opened the green folder. There were photographs of a stone house on a hillside. She narrated them slowly. Roof, view, kitchen, 3 bedrooms, a library her friend wanted converted. Hannah listened and asked one question about the natural light in the library, and Mi-suk answered warmly and said, "Yes, this is exactly the kind of eye she needs." And Min-jae, sitting across from them, smiled a smile so wide it made his mother's smile look small. He believed that was the part that made Mi-suk's fist tighten again under the silk. Bok Nam came in with a fresh tray, small savories, a pear sliced very thin. "Bok Nam," Mi-suk said, mid-photograph, without lifting her eyes from the page, "please prepare the small kitchen. I want to show Hannah the family recipe tonight, the one my mother made for me when I was young." Bok Nam did not react. "Yes, madam." She left. The door closed. Min-jae said, "You are cooking, mother." "I am teaching," Mi-suk corrected, gentle. "There is a difference. It is time Hannah learned this one. It is the recipe every woman of this house has carried since my mother's mother. I want it to pass through her hands now." She turned to Hannah with the warmest face she had used all evening. "Would you come with me? Just us. Half an hour. I promise. Then we all eat together, and Min-jae can suffer through my telling him again about the day he was born." Min-jae laughed. He looked at Hannah. Hannah felt every muscle in her jaw hold itself perfectly steady. She had planned to tell Mi-suk about the baby before the coffee ended. To open the clutch here, in this warm amber room, with Min-jae beside her, and hand over the ivory box the way she and Min-jae had rehearsed. The 3 of them, together, the safest ground she had been able to imagine. That plan was gone. Mi-suk had seen the bottle. Mi-suk had not spoken. Mi-suk was inviting her alone into a kitchen. Hannah made her decision in the space of one exhale. Not yet. Not until she understood what the invitation was. "I would love to," she said. Min-jae reached across the coffee table and squeezed her hand. He did not know he was watching a woman walk toward a door that had been rehung while she wasn't looking. Mi-suk rose. She held out her arm. Hannah stood and took it. At the door, Mi-suk paused. She turned her head back toward Min-jae, still in the armchair. "My love," she said, "give us a little time. Just the 2 of us. There are things a mother should say to a daughter alone the first time." Min-jae hesitated for half a second. Then he nodded. "Of course, mother." He looked at Hannah. Hannah looked back. She let her eyes hold his one beat longer than was necessary. It was the closest thing to a signal she could send in front of the woman on her arm. He did not read it. He smiled. Mi-suk led her out. In the corridor, the light changed. The amber lamps of the sitting room gave way to cooler sconces along the wall of black and white photographs, the Kang men in their generations, 4 framed prints in a straight line, chins lifted at the same angle, mouths set the same way. Hannah felt Mi-suk's fingers on the inside of her elbow, not tight, not loose, placed. They passed the first photograph. "You will like this kitchen," Mi-suk said. "It is the only room in this house my husband never entered. I designed it. I keep it. It is the only place I go when I want to be alone with a thought." "Then thank you for taking me there." "Of course, my daughter." The word daughter fell out of Mi-suk's mouth the way an object falls out of a hand that has forgotten it was holding it. They passed the second photograph. "Mother," Hannah said, quiet. "Yes. May I ask you something before we reach the kitchen?" "Anything?" Hannah kept walking. Her voice stayed low and even. "How long ago did you decide you wanted to speak to me alone tonight?" Mi-suk's step did not change. "About an hour," she said, and smiled at the wall of photographs as they walked past the third one. "Since the moment I saw how carefully you were carrying that little bag." Hannah did not react. Her chin stayed where it had been. "Ah," she said. "Ah." They reached the kitchen door. Mi-suk opened it and stepped aside so that Hannah would enter first. Hannah entered first. Behind them, at the other end of the corridor, a floorboard shifted under a weight that was trying not to be heard. Neither of the women turned to look. Only one of them noticed. She kept walking into the room. Hannah's low heel touched the pale grain of the marble floor, and the kitchen swallowed the sound. It was a room that ate footsteps. The overhead light was a cold white, colder than the ambient amber of the sitting room, and it turned the copper pots on their rack the color of old coins. Mi-suk came in behind her, closed the door with the flat of her palm, and the click of the latch was smaller than the click of the powder room lock had been. "Come, stand by the island." Hannah walked to the white marble slab. She set the clutch on the far corner, close enough to reach, far enough to look casual. Her fingers rested on the veined stone. Cold seeped up through them into the bones of her wrist. Boknam was already inside, folding a linen towel by the sink. A second housemaid, younger, was pouring a measure of rice into a copper bowl. A third was slicing a pear at the far end. 3 people in a kitchen that could sleep 10. Mi-suk lifted one hand. Boknam turned. Her chin came down half a degree. "Yes, madam. Take the girls out. Close the service door. I want to speak privately with my daughter-in-law." The word landed in a room where every surface reflected light. Hannah heard it the way a person hears a coin dropped on stone in an empty church. Daughter-in-law, 12 months of my daughter, had never carried that specific word. Mi-suk had chosen it. She had chosen it now. Boknam did not look at Hannah. Boknam looked at Mi-suk a beat longer than protocol permitted, and Mi-suk's jaw shifted a millimeter under the porcelain skin. "Yes, madam." The younger maid set the copper bowl on the counter without a sound. The pear knife was placed flat, blade turned inward, on the cutting board. The 3 of them moved to the service door in the order they had learned as girls, tallest first, and Boknam last. Boknam paused at the threshold. Her hand rested on the frame for 1 second, then she was gone. The service door closed. The main kitchen door, the one Hannah and Mi-suk had come through, was already shut. 2 doors, 1 room, 2 women. Hannah heard, very faintly, the soft brush of a floorboard settling under a shifted weight somewhere beyond the pantry door on the north wall. She did not turn her head. Mi-suk crossed to the far side of the island. She stopped with the marble between them and rested both hands on the stone, fingers spread. The jade ring on her right hand caught the overhead light and threw a small green square onto the marble. Her wedding band above it did not catch anything. "Sit," she said. "I'll stand." Misuk's mouth moved, not a smile, the muscle memory of one. As you like. Between them on the marble was a shallow ceramic bowl of unpeeled ginger. Beside it, a small saucer with a single dried date. Beside that, a folded piece of parchment paper. Misuk's gaze went to none of these things. Her gaze went to the clutch on the far corner of the island. You brought it with you. Hannah did not answer. She did not touch the clutch. She let her hands stay on the marble, palm down, fingers relaxed. Misuk drew a slow breath through her nose. The porcelain finish of her face did not change. The change was underneath. Something loosened at the corners of her mouth, and the softness of the last hour retreated inward like a tide. Do you know why I asked you here alone? The recipe. There is no recipe. Hannah felt her weight settle a half-inch deeper into her heels. She kept her chin level. She kept her eyes on Misuk's eyes. Then why? Misuk lifted her right hand off the marble and laid it, palm up, halfway across the island toward Hannah. An old gesture. It cost her nothing. Because I would like to speak to you as one grown woman speaks to another, without my son standing behind you, without my housekeeper listening at the door, without the smile I have worn for 12 months. Only us. The words were beautiful. They had been rehearsed. Hannah recognized the shape of a woman who had chosen her sentences, the way a diplomat chooses which flag to hang in the room. Then speak. Misuk's palm did not withdraw, it waited. Your hand, Misuk said. Give me your hand. Hannah did not move. The palm stayed open a second longer, then folded, then went back down onto the marble. The jade square of light on the stone shifted an inch to the left. Very well. Misuk walked around the corner of the island. She did not approach Hannah. She stopped by the range, opened a drawer under the copper pots, and drew out a small linen apron. She tied it around her waist, cream linen over dove-gray silk. She was a woman who could tie an apron in a straight line without a mirror. I will make you tea, she said. Chrysanthemum. My mother's mother made it for me when I was pregnant with Minjae. It settles the stomach. Hannah's palm on the marble kept its pressure exactly the same. She did not blink. I'm not pregnant. Misuk's back was to her. Misuk's shoulders rose a half-breath, held, released. Then it will settle mine. She lifted a small iron kettle. She carried it to the tap. Water rang against iron. The sound went on longer than it should have. She turned the tap off. She set the kettle on the range. Blue flame bloomed. She turned around and faced Hannah across the island. I saw the vitamins. Hannah's face did nothing. In the sitting room, in your bag, when you went to the powder room, I opened it. I looked. I saw the ivory box, and I saw the note, and I did not read the note. I saw the amber bottle, prenatal complex, folate, iron, B12, your name on the label, 3 weeks. She said each item the way another woman would say each object on a shopping list. So I know. The air of the kitchen felt thinner. Misuk glanced once, very briefly, at that wall. She had heard it too. Her face registered nothing. She adjusted the flame under the kettle by a quarter turn. You are going to tell me now, she said, that I had no right. I wasn't going to say anything. Good. You are learning fast. She lifted a small canister of dried chrysanthemum flowers from the shelf. She spooned them into a porcelain pot. Her hands worked while she spoke, and the working hands made the words sound domestic and reasonable, and Hannah recognized that trick too. 12 months ago, Misuk said, my son brought you to this house. I did not know your name until the car door opened. He told me nothing before. He is stubborn like his father. Also, he was afraid. He was right to be afraid. She replaced the canister on the shelf. She turned back. That first night, in this same kitchen, before you and I ever met, I stood exactly where you are standing. Bok Nam stood where I am standing. I told her I would give you 6 months. Bok Nam said, "Longer, madam. She is not a girl who runs." Bok Nam was correct. It has been 12, and here we are. Hannah's throat was dry. She did not swallow. Swallowing was a movement. You gave me 6 months to what? To leave. The blue flame under the kettle made a small pop. On your own. Without my son knowing that I was helping you leave, without any injury to his pride or to yours. I planned it as a slow tide, not a wave. A friend of mine would offer you a project in Milan, a gallery, your name on the door, enough money to make walking away look like ambition and not surrender. My son would grieve 6 weeks and marry a girl I had been keeping in reserve since he was 17. You would be free. He would be settled. The line would continue. She said, the line, the way a farmer says the crop. That was the plan. It was a good plan. It respected you. It didn't respect me. It respected you more than the alternatives. What were the alternatives? Misuk did not answer that. Hannah's hand on the marble had gone from warm to cool. The stone was drinking her heat. She let it. She did not move her hand. So for 12 months, Hannah said, you sat across from me at dinners and called me my daughter and touched my hair and told me the color of my dress reminded you of a peony in your grandmother's garden. Yes, and each of those was a step in the plan. Each was a step to make the leaving feel like your idea when the time came. Yes, Hannah heard, faintly, breath released and recaught behind the pantry door. Not loud, not a gasp. A man learning something and swallowing it before it left his body. Misuk heard it too. She did not turn her head. Her eyes stayed on Hannah. Something small passed behind them and was covered. But the vitamins, she said, and now her voice lost the domestic cadence and dropped a half-tone lower. The vitamins changed the plan. You understand this. Explain it to me. Milan was for a woman without a child. A woman with a child does not walk. A woman with a child stays and fights. You would stay, you would fight. My son would fight beside you. The line would not continue as I intend. The line would continue as you intend, which is not the same. Because the child is black. The sentence sat between them on the marble like a knife somebody had laid down. Misuk did not blink. Because the child is not fully Kang. Say the other word. I chose my word. Say the other word. Misuk's fingers moved once against the counter. Her wedding band tapped stone. A single small sound. I will not raise a grandchild whose face does not resemble 11 generations of this family. I will not hand this house, this name, and this graveyard to a boy who will spend his life explaining who he is at the door. I will not do it because it will destroy him, and it will destroy this line, and I have carried this line for 32 years, and I will not be the woman who let it end in confusion. She had rehearsed this too, but the last 3 words came out unrehearsed, and the wedding band tapped stone twice more. Confusion, Hannah said. Yes. About what? About which side of himself he belongs to. About which grandmother he can look in the eye. About which country claims him first. About whether he is a Kang boy who happens to be dark, or a dark boy who happens to carry the Kang name. Every hour of his life will be that question. I will not put a child through that. You are worried about the child. I am worried about the child. Hannah's hand on the marble stayed still. Somewhere inside her ribcage, something small was catching fire, and she banked it and kept it small. You are worried, she said, about which grandmother he can look in the eye. Yes. And you already know which grandmother he will not be able to look in the eye. Misuk did not answer. She turned to the kettle. The kettle had not yet whistled. Hannah watched the flat of the older woman's back, the perfect low chignon, the silk skirt hanging in a line that fell exactly parallel to the range. She watched Misuk's right hand go to the shelf and take down a small porcelain cup, and she saw the tremor in the two smallest fingers as the cup came off the shelf, and she watched Misuk set the cup down and lay her hand flat on the counter to still it. Behind the pantry door, silence. The kind of silence a body makes when it is deciding what to do with its lungs. You had another plan, Hannah said. Behind the Milan plan, in case Milan failed. There is always another plan. Say it. Misuk turned. Her face had gone one shade paler under the porcelain. She had not intended to say the next sentence out loud. She said it anyway. There is a house in Busan. It belongs to a family that owes mine a favor, 2 generations old. If a young woman in this house were to develop a nervous condition and require quiet care by the sea, she could be there by tomorrow evening. There would be a doctor. There would be a good doctor. There would be a decision made about the pregnancy by a woman who had been told, gently, that the pregnancy was already unwell. She would be told this so kindly she would believe it. She would come home in 6 weeks later. My son would grieve a different kind of grief, and the line would continue. The kitchen was very quiet. Hannah felt her right hand leave the marble and settle, flat, low across the front of her cream dress, over her belly, where her belly was still flat and no one could see anything yet. She heard her own breath go in through her nose. You would have taken my child from me. I would have taken a problem from a house. You would have taken my child. I would have taken a problem from a house. Something in Misuk broke around the mouth. It was not remorse. It was the small breakage of a woman realizing she had said the sentence too clearly and could not now unsay it. Her wedding band tapped the stone a 4th time. I did not want to tell you about Busan. I wanted to tell you about Milan. Milan was for you. Busan is what happens if Milan fails. Milan has now failed. You just decided that. I decided it when I saw the amber bottle. The kettle began, faintly, to hiss. Not a whistle yet. Just heat announcing itself. Hannah's hand stayed over her belly. Her other hand stayed on the marble. She let the 2 hands be very quiet and very still, and she let the room hear her breathing, and she let her breathing be even. Mother, she said. The word had never cost her more. I need you to say it plainly, so I understand, so I am not confused. Say what? Say what you will not allow in this house. Misuk's chin lifted. The porcelain woman came back for a second. The chignon caught the cold light. I will not allow a black heir in this family. She had not meant to raise her voice. She raised it. The sentence hit the copper pots and came back off them harder than it had gone out. It hit the marble island, and it hit the 2 doors, and it hit the pantry wall, and it hit the woman standing across the island in the cream dress, and it hit the man on the other side of the pantry door, who had been holding his breath for 11 minutes. The kettle chose that moment to whistle. Neither woman turned to it. Neither woman moved. Hannah's palm stayed flat over her belly. Her other palm stayed flat on the marble. She felt, at the base of her throat, the delicate gold chain shift a millimeter. With a single deep breath she took and released. She did not shout. She did not weep. She held Misuk's gaze the way a woman holds a burning coal in a folded cloth. The kettle whistled higher. Misuk's hand went to the range and cut the flame. The whistle died in 3 descending steps. The kitchen filled with the small sound of iron cooling. There, Misuk said. Her voice had come back down to domestic. She had put the porcelain back on. Now you know. Now we can speak as women who understand each other. Hannah did not answer. Misuk waited. Behind the pantry door on the north wall, the floorboard did not creak. Whoever had been standing there was standing very still now, and standing very still was itself a decision, and Hannah understood, without turning her head, that the decision had been made. She let her hand come off her belly. She placed it, palm down, beside her other hand on the marble, both hands flat, both hands warm now. The stone had stopped drinking. She opened her mouth to answer Misuk. She had not yet chosen the words. Hannah closed her mouth. She had not chosen the words, and now she chose not to hand Misuk the ones the woman had rehearsed for. Silence was a room, and Hannah decided who entered it. She let 3 seconds pass, then 4. Misuk waited across the marble, apron creased at the waist, chignon still intact, the small kettle cooling behind her with a faint metal tick as its body forgot the flame. "You want me to answer," Hannah said. "I do." "Then wait." Misuk's chin lifted a 1/4 inch. The jade ring tapped the stone once and stopped. Hannah moved her hands from the marble to her hips, the cream crepe of the dress catching the light along the seam. She looked around the kitchen the way a designer looks at a room she has been asked to price. The copper pots, the lacquered cabinets, the service door, closed, the pantry door, closed only in name. She counted the light fixtures, she counted the drawer pulls. She was buying herself the length of 2 breaths, and she took them. "Ask what you came to ask," Misuk said. "We agreed to speak as women." "You agreed." I stood. The correction landed. Misuk's mouth compressed at the corners, a small tell she had trained out of herself years ago and had lost the muscle for now. "Sit," she said. "No." Hannah walked around the island, not toward Misuk and not away. She moved along the long side, hand trailing the edge of the stone, the way a person tests a rail on a bridge. The pantry wall came within reach of her fingers. She let her palm brush the paneling once, casually, the way she would touch a doorframe in a client's foyer. On the other side of that wood, she felt the still weight of him. She did not turn her face. She let her palm rest a beat longer than a hostess would, then walked on. Misuk watched the palm, watched the wall. The registration was quick and clean, and Misuk did not name it. Instead, she reached under the counter, drew out a lacquered box the size of a small book, and set it on the island between them. "Open it." "No. You have not seen what I am offering." "Then say it." Misuk lifted the lid herself. A checkbook. Not any checkbook. The private one, the leather sleeve embossed with the Kang crest, the paper stock so soft it slumped when held. A fountain pen laid across the sleeve, cap on, the barrel a pearl cool gray. "Name a number," Misuk said. "Any number. Anything you have imagined, and then double it. Milan, if you want Milan. Paris, if Paris is easier. A studio with your name on it, in a city where no one remembers this year. A staff, 2 staff, a car, an apartment, a stipend that renews on the 1st of every month for the rest of your life. It clears through a Kang holding so nothing is traced to you. Nothing lands on a tax form with my son's name. You already said Milan. I am offering it again in different words. The words don't change the door I walk through." Misuk opened the checkbook. She held the pen without uncapping it. A woman who wanted to prove she was still the one who decided when a number became real. 7 figures, she said. 8. It is not the money, it is the arithmetic of what stays intact. Your studio survives. Your Tribeca client keeps his brass and his banquets. Your Fifth Avenue client keeps her opinion of you. You leave with a story you can carry. My career took me. My mother-in-law was gracious. We grew apart with dignity. No one has to hear a shouted word. No one has to remember me shouting. I remember. Then unremember for the right price. Hannah did not move. Her hand had lowered from the paneling. The clutch remained in its corner. Ivory box still sealed inside it. Note still folded inside that. Every offer Misuk made was a fresh confession. Hannah let each land, weighed it, and set it aside. You are calm, Misuk said. That is worth something. You misread it. I read what I see. You see what you rehearsed. The jade ring tapped again. Twice this time. A woman used to being agreed with. discovering the taste of a room that refuses her. Hannah folded her arms lightly, the way a person folds arms, because the cold of the marble has begun to reach the elbows, and not because the arms need defense. She looked at the checkbook, and then at Misuk. How much of the 12 months was the checkbook? None. Then it was not a plan, it was a rehearsal. Explain the difference. A plan trusts the outcome. A rehearsal expects to change lines. You changed lines when you saw the bottle. You are changing them now. Misuk set the pen down. She did not put it back in the sleeve. She placed it flat on the marble beside the checkbook, parallel to the veining, precise. You have thought about this. I have lived in this house for enough weekends to think about it. You never spent a night alone with me. I never had to. Boknam served me tea the first weekend. She poured mine before she poured yours. Misuk's eyelids lowered a fraction. The house lived on invisible ledgers, and Hannah had just told her which line she had read. Boknam is loyal to this house. Boknam is loyal to the boy she raised. That is not the same thing. The pantry board did not move. Hannah did not check. She trusted the man on the other side of the wood to hear this ledger and hold his breath the way he was already holding it. Misuk changed tone. She had a second dress in her voice, a third, a fourth. The one she reached for now was softer, closer to the bed of the throat, the register of a woman who used to sing. I did not want to shout. I have not shouted in this house in 19 years. You shouted today. Because you did not take the tea. You brewed the tea after you looked in my bag. I brewed the tea for a granddaughter I hoped I did not have. You brewed it after you were sure. The kitchen went very still. The refrigerator across the room cycled once, a quiet hum that reached the middle of the floor and dissolved. Misuk lifted a hand and pressed 2 fingers to the base of her own throat, above the pearls, the gesture of a woman locating her pulse to remember she was in a body. You are a designer, she said. I am. Then imagine the room, ivory silk on a wall your child leans against, a crib carved from a single piece of walnut, cut in Yeongju, brought here in 1963, a rocking chair that belonged to my mother-in-law. Imagine yourself in that room, holding a child who has one grandmother in Chicago and one in this house, and imagine which grandmother he calls first when he learns to speak. Imagine which name he chooses. Imagine the small tribunal of that. You are describing your own fear. I am describing his life. You are describing your fear of standing second. Misuk exhaled through the nose. The pearls at her throat rose and fell once, cleanly. You do not know, she said, what it is to raise the last name of 11 generations. I know what it is to raise a child. You are not raising one yet. I am. The word landed like a small pebble in a still glass of water. Misuk did not blink. She did not correct it. She had heard the sentence 100 ways in her own head since the bottle, and this was the one that came without varnish. She let it stand between them. She did not ask the number of weeks. She had opened a drawer, and she would not now ask the label she had already read. Then imagine harder, she said. No. No. I will not build the room you are describing. I will not build the room you are describing. I will not build the room you are describing. I will not build the room you are describing. I will not build the room you are describing. I will not build the room you are describing. He is an argument, whether or not I speak him into one. You cannot design your way out of that. I can raise a boy who does not answer to your table. Misuk nodded slowly, as if the sentence had confirmed something she had time to arrive. That, she said, is exactly why I would remove you. You already tried. I offered you Milan. You would have followed with Busan. Hannah said the second word plainly. It sat on the marble between them beside the pen. Misuk did not flinch. She had already spoken the sentence with her own mouth. She was past the moment when it could be denied. "You know it now," Misuk said. "I knew it before you said it." "Then why let me say it?" "Because you needed to hear yourself say it." Misuk looked down at the pearls. The strand had traveled a quarter turn on her throat while she was speaking, and she did not correct it. A woman who has trained her body for a photograph for 30 years does not misplace her pearls, and Misuk had misplaced hers. She left them. "There is a version of this," Misuk said, "where you leave with the checkbook, and I never see you again, and my son grieves and marries in 6 weeks. There is a version where you refuse, and I withdraw the checkbook, and my son grieves and marries anyway. There is a version where you refuse, and I do not withdraw anything, and the house makes a life for you in a room upstairs, where I do not have to look at your child, but I feed him twice a day for 18 years. I am offering you the first version because I am tired. I am too old to run the third one." You are not offering, you are triaging. Both. The first one costs a child. The first one costs a country, not a child. You keep the child. You keep him in a city where his last name is your last name. The child is fine. The child is loved. By whom? Misuk did not answer. She had the answer. She did not say it. It was the first honest silence she had offered since Hannah walked into the kitchen. "Say his father's name," Hannah said. Misuk did not. "Say your son's name." Misuk did not. "You cannot pay me to name him in a room where you refuse to name yours." The jade ring tapped once, and this time it was not a signal. It was the small tremor of a hand that had almost stopped agreeing with its owner. Hannah stepped closer to the island. She did not reach for the checkbook. She reached for the pen. She picked it up, held it a moment, examined the barrel, and set it down on the far side of the sleeve, where Misuk would have to lean across the marble to retrieve it. A small, quiet rearrangement of the room's geography. "Put the book away," Hannah said. "I have not written a number." "You will not." Misuk did not move to close the box. She looked at the pen where it now lay, then at Hannah's hand, then at Hannah's face. "There is another offer. I did not ask for one. I am giving it anyway. You will remember I said it. Later, when this house is a story you tell your son. You leave. You do not take Milan. You take a house in Connecticut. 2 hours. No border. Same country. The child grows in English. I do not visit. I do not call. The trust is quiet. Every June my son visits alone for 1 weekend. He returns. He returns to a life I arrange for him. You keep the boy. You keep the name off the boy. He grows up with a different last name. A name from your side. I lose the line. I accept that I lose the line. You take that from me. I hand it to you. I hand it. That is my offer." Hannah closed her eyes for one breath. Then she opened them. "You would gut your own house," she said, "before you let him carry your name. I would gut it to keep it clean. That is not a house. That is a museum with the lights off." Misuk's mouth trembled once. She stopped it. "Answer the offer." "No." "No, which one?" "No to all of them. To Milan, to Busan, to Connecticut, to a name from my side, to the room upstairs, to the weekend in June, to the tribunal, to the walnut crib in Yeongju, to the ivory silk on the wall. No to every arrangement of the words you can build. No to the next one you have not said yet." Misuk's hand closed on the edge of the checkbook. Her knuckles went from bone to paper. "You do not understand what you are refusing." "I understand exactly. You are refusing a life. I am refusing yours." The kettle ticked one more time as it cooled. The refrigerator hummed and went silent. Somewhere at the far end of the house, a clock struck a soft half-hour and stopped. The service door on the other side of the kitchen breathed once as air pressure shifted through the corridor. and Hannah realized Baknam had walked past it, close, and continued on. The house was listening. Misuk drew herself up. The chignon still held. The pearls did not. She lifted a hand to the strand and rotated it back into place with the small, automatic gesture of a woman who has done it in mirrors since she was 17. And this time the gesture failed her. Her fingers were unsteady, and she left a pearl seated crookedly on the hollow of her throat and did not reach again. "Then hear me clearly," Misuk said, and her voice went low, the way voices go low when a person has decided to speak the sentence they have carried longest. "There will be no black child in this line." Hannah did not answer. "There will be no photograph of that child on the wall of this house." Hannah did not answer. "There will be no name for that child in the book my father kept." Hannah did not answer. "There will be no visit from that child. There will be no bed for that child upstairs. There will be no plate for that child at this table. There will be no January morning where that child stands in this doorway and calls me by a word I would have to answer to." Hannah did not answer. She did not have to. Misuk was building the wall around her own house with her own hands, brick by brick, and every brick was a witness. There will be no page in the ledger. There will be no line on the stone. There will be no name on the door in Busan. There will be no seat at any funeral of any Kang who has died or who will die. There will be nothing. Do you understand? Nothing. Nothing. Misuk stopped. She was breathing through the mouth now. She caught it, closed her lips, and made her breathing pass through the nose again. "Say something," she said. "You have not asked me a question. Say something to what I have said." Hannah looked at the pen she had moved. She looked at the closed checkbook. She looked at the pantry wall she had touched. She lifted her chin 1/4 inch, the same 1/4 inch Misuk had lifted hers a lifetime ago at the start of this scene, and she chose the sentence she had been holding since the corridor. "I want you to say the word you almost said in the beginning." "I said it." "You shouted it. Say it standing still." Misuk did not. "Say it in the register you use for pearls." Misuk did not. "Say it in the voice you use when you call yourself mother in front of my husband." Misuk's face closed. The face was a door, and she pulled the door shut and stood behind it. Hannah waited. The kitchen waited. The pantry board did not move. Min-jae was not breathing on the other side of the wood. He was breathing so shallowly that even a wall could not hear him. Hannah felt him there the way one feels a lit lamp in the next room without looking. "You will not say it standing still," Hannah said, "because standing still it becomes a sentence you cannot walk back." "I have already said it. Not to me, to the room. Say it to me." "I will not repeat myself." "Then I will." Hannah placed both palms flat on the marble, the way she had before Misuk shouted. She kept them there. She did not raise her voice. She spoke the way a designer names a color, precise and unhurried, so that a client cannot pretend later they misheard. "You will not allow a black heir in this family." "I have said it." "You will not allow my son to carry your name." "I have said it." "You will not allow this pregnancy to reach a January." Misuk's mouth opened, closed, opened. The jade ring lifted from the marble and hovered, uncertain, above the stone. "Say yes to that one," Hannah said, "the way you said yes to Milan." The house held, the pantry board held, the pearls held on their crooked seat. Misuk breathed once through the nose and once through the nose, and then she said the word she had been holding under every other word she had spoken all day. Yes. Hannah did not move. She did not move for a long moment. She had one hand at the marble and one hand at her side, and she moved the hand at her side up, slowly, past the seam of the cream dress, past the belt of the waist, and rested it flat over the small warm place under her navel, where the child was 7 weeks old and still smaller than a fig. Misuk saw the hand travel. Misuk's eyes went from the hand to Hannah's face and back to the hand. The pearl fell into place on its own. Hannah drew one breath, and on that breath she prepared the sentence that would end the mother who stood across from her, not with a shout, not with a checkbook, not with a slammed door, but with the flat, quiet arithmetic of a truth spoken once. She did not speak it yet. She held it in her mouth like a stone she had already decided to place. The kettle ticked one final time and went cold. Behind the pantry wall, a man who had promised his wife he would not lose his calm kept the promise for one more breath. And Hannah opened her mouth to say the thing that would make the room a country Misuk could no longer govern. Hannah spoke, and the number arrived first. 7 weeks. The word hung above the marble like a single struck bell. Misuk received it standing, hands still flat on the stone, apron creased where her hip had pressed against the edge, her chin lifted a 1/4 inch. The pearl that had earlier tilted and reseated stayed obedient this time. 7 weeks, Hannah repeated, quieter. Since the last week of September. The kettle had gone cold. Somewhere far in the house, a clock finished a chime nobody was listening for. And I will never allow my child to grow up believing he is inferior. The sentence landed. Hannah did not raise her voice. She was a designer naming a color that a client was going to have to live with for 30 years. Misuk's fingers curled inward, then flattened. The knuckles went white against the stone and then, deliberately, released. She had trained herself, across 4 decades of dinner tables, to lose composure only in rooms with locks. This room had a listener behind a door, and she still had not turned to look at it. 7, Misuk said, testing the word for weight. 7. You are certain? I have 3 ultrasounds, and a doctor at Mount Sinai who is certain for me. Misuk's eyes went to the clutch at the far end of the island. She did not move toward it. She had already earned the right, months ago in her own accounting, to open that clutch, and she had chosen not to open the box then, and she was choosing not to reach for it now. The refusal was not delicacy. It was calculation. If she opened it now, she opened it in front of the mother of the child, and there was a version of Misuk still trying to survive the next 10 minutes, as a woman with dignity. 3, she said. 3 ultrasounds. The first at 4 weeks, the second at 5, the third at 6 and 3 days. He measures on schedule. His heartbeat is 162. Misuk's mouth opened and did not release a word. She had prepared for a number. She had not prepared for a heartbeat with a decimal. And the note in the box, Hannah said, because there was no point now in hiding any of the architecture, is for the grandmother we hoped would love our baby. I wrote it 4 times. The 4th time, I stopped rewriting it, because the paper started to look like an apology, and I do not owe you an apology for what I am carrying. Misuk took a breath through her nose. It was the first breath in the room that anyone had heard for what felt like a season. Sit, she said. No. Please. No, mother. The word cost something small and precise. Misuk received the cost and did not acknowledge it. She walked to the range. She did not relight the kettle. She stood beside it with her back to Hannah, palms braced on the cold cast iron, the way older women brace themselves against a wall when a knee gives out. Her shoulders were the same width they had been an hour ago. Nothing about the silhouette had failed. Everything about the silhouette had failed. 162, she said, to the kettle. That is a strong number. Yes. My son measured 140 at that stage. His father used to tell that story, to say a Kang boy is born slow and stays slow. He meant it as a compliment. He meant a great deal that he never said properly. I did not come to hear about your husband. I know. Misuk's shoulders lowered a 1/4 inch. I have not said his name in 22 months. Not in this house, not to a servant, not in a room with another human being. You noticed. You asked. I did not answer. I still cannot answer. I will not use my son's name in this kitchen either, not because I do not have them, because the walls have already had them enough. Hannah watched the back of the woman. She had been prepared for a second attack. She had not been prepared for this. A small confession delivered to a burner. You would still send me to Busan. Mi-suk's shoulders tightened again. Yes, after what I just told you. Especially after what you just told me. The word especially traveled the length of the island and reached Hannah's hand on the stone. Her fingers spread. She kept them there. The wedding band on her ring finger caught the overhead light. The overhead light did not care. Because a heartbeat, Hannah said slowly, is a thing you can measure, and what you can measure, you can end. Mi-suk did not answer that. Which was the answer? Hannah moved, one step around the corner of the island, closer, so that the two women were now no longer separated by the whole length of the stone, but by the short edge, 3 feet, close enough that a raised voice would land like a slap. Look at me. Mi-suk turned. The porcelain finish held, the pearl held, the chignon held. Only the eyes had traveled somewhere the composition could not follow them, and the eyes were the one thing Hannah had learned, in 12 months of study, to read. Look at me and say the number again. 7 weeks. Say it in the way you said yes to January. Mi-suk's throat moved. 7 weeks. Now say what you would do about it. Mi-suk did not blink. That, in this woman, was closer to weeping than a normal woman's flood. I would do, Mi-suk said, and the sentence stalled and she started again. I would have arranged a doctor, a car, a house with a garden facing the sea, a woman who has raised 4 daughters and understands what a young wife needs after a difficult decision, chrysanthemum tea, 6 weeks. You would have killed my son. I would have addressed a problem. Hannah's mouth curved. It was not a smile, it was the shape a mouth makes when a mouth is refusing to break. You keep using the same sentence. You said it to me 40 minutes ago. Word for word. You rehearsed that one before I arrived. Mi-suk's chin dropped a fraction and lifted again. I rehearsed all of them. The confession sat there between them. I rehearsed Milan for 11 months. I rehearsed Busan for 4. I rehearsed the country house I would never take you to, and the friend in Milan who has not yet been told her name, is being used, and the check I offered you tonight, in figures I have never written in a real ledger. I have been rehearsing rooms, and I do not know how to be in one without a script. Then be in one without a script. I do not know how. Try. Mi-suk opened her hands. The palms were pink from the pressure of the range. I am afraid, she said. 2 words. In this woman, an entire coastline collapsing. I am afraid of a room in 10 years where a child asks me a question in a language I speak, and I cannot answer him, because I do not know how to answer to a face that will remind me every day that the world I built is not the world he was born into. I am afraid of the January morning when he walks through my door and calls me by a word I do not deserve. I am afraid of my mother's photograph on the wall watching me hold that child. I am afraid of what my son will feel when he stands beside me at his father's grave, and I will not be able to look at him because the man in the ground is watching us through my face. Hannah listened. She did not interrupt. She let the older woman speak the fear all the way through, because the older woman had spent an hour and a half not saying it and had earned the exhale. Then Hannah answered, You are describing a room you built. Mi-suk's eyes shone. She did not let anything fall. My child, Hannah said, will walk into any room he wants to walk into. He will call whoever loves him whatever they earn. If you are afraid of a January morning, then do not be in the doorway that morning. That is a decision you make. That is not a decision he inherits. She stopped. She let the sentence sit. You will not sacrifice my son to your inheritance of fear. Mi-suk's mouth was open. No word came out of it. Behind the pantry wall, the man who had promised his wife he would not lose his calm kept the promise. His breathing had not changed. His shoulders had not shifted. He had heard the number 7. He had heard the heartbeat 162. He had heard his mother name the fear. He had heard his wife name the wall. And none of it moved him from the position he had chosen 40 minutes ago. He was waiting for one specific thing. He had not yet decided which sentence would be the one. Hannah did not know that. Hannah was still working. She reached across the short edge of the island and did the thing she had not done all afternoon. She put her hand, palm up, on the stone between them. "Give me your hand." Misuk stared at the offered palm. "Why?" "Because I want you to feel that it is warm. Because if you were going to sign a paper that ended a life, I want you to sign it after you have touched the hand that is carrying it. I want you to have to remember, in the car on the way to Busan, that my hand was warm." Misuk did not move. "Give it to me, mother." The word mother cost the same as before and was spent anyway. Misuk lifted her hand. It shook once, corrected itself, crossed the marble, and landed inside Hannah's palm. Skin against skin. Hannah closed her fingers gently, not a grip, a holding, the way a nurse holds a wrist to check a pulse, precise, without possession. "Do you feel that?" Misuk's throat moved. "Yes." "Say it again." "Yes." Now imagine writing his name on a page and asking someone else to hold his hand for the last time. Not you. Someone in Busan. Misuk's shoulders went. The porcelain cracked without a sound. Her mouth folded inward. A single tear left her right eye, tracked one clean line across the powdered cheek, and stopped at the corner of her mouth. She did not lift her free hand to catch it. She did not turn her face away. She let Hannah watch it happen. It was the first thing in the room, in an hour, that was not rehearsed. Hannah held the hand a moment longer, then she released it. Misuk's hand hovered above the marble, unclaimed, then dropped to her side. "You have not answered," Hannah said. "What?" "Whether you would still send the car." The kitchen did not breathe. Misuk looked at her own hand as though she had never used it before. She looked at the pearl at her throat. She looked at the ring on her right hand, where the jade had gone dull with the loss of the overhead light. She looked at the far corner of the island where the clutch sat with a note inside it addressed to her. "I do not know," she said. "That," Hannah said, "is worse than yes." Misuk's face did something that had not happened in this house in 19 years. It moved without permission. The mouth pulled sideways. The jaw softened. The eyebrows came together and did not smooth. For a full second, the woman who had run a household of 11 staff and 4 gardens looked exactly like the girl in the album her son had never seen, the one who had married into a language and lost her mother's name in a signature. Then the composure returned. It returned slower than usual. It returned the way a curtain closes when the pulley is old. "I cannot," Misuk said, "unhear 162. Then hear it again. 162. Stop. 162. Please. 162. 7 weeks. A boy. My son." Misuk stepped back from the island. Her hip caught the drawer with the aprons. She did not write herself. She let the counter catch her. "You have made your point." "I have not made a point," Hannah said. "I have said a fact. You do not get to receive it as an argument. It is my son. He is not a debate you and I are having." Misuk stood against the drawer. Her hand went, unbidden, to the pearl at her throat. She did not tug at it. She held it, as a woman holds a small object for comfort. The pearl was warm from her skin. Her skin was cold. "I would like," she said, "to sit down." "Then sit." There was a stool at the corner of the island. Misuk crossed to it in 3 small steps and lowered herself onto it. Her spine did not touch the back. Her feet crossed at the ankles. Even collapsing, she was choreographed. Hannah stayed standing. She had earned the height. "You said," Misuk began, and stopped, and began again. You said, earlier, that you knew from the first weekend, about the tea. About the tea. You knew Baknam had chosen you before I had. Yes. And you stayed. Yes. Why? Hannah considered the question. It was the first honest question the woman had asked her. Because my husband asked me to try. Because I promised him a year. Because I love him more than I hate this house. Misuk nodded once, slowly, the nod of a woman receiving a diagnosis. He asked you for a year. He asked me for a year. And the year is tonight. Misuk closed her eyes. When she opened them, they were dry. He knows. He knows what I am carrying. He knew before you walked in tonight that this was the last time you would. Yes. Misuk absorbed this. She did not react. She had spent the year assuming she was the one running the calendar. She learned, in a single exchange, that her son had built a parallel one. Then this, she said, quietly, was not a coffee. This was a notice. This was a chance. A chance for what? A chance for you to be the grandmother of the letter in that box. Instead of the woman who signed a car to Busan. Misuk's eyes moved, at last, to the clutch at the far end of the island. They stayed there. May I read it? No. The refusal was quiet. It was final. Hannah did not soften it. You do not, Hannah said, get to receive a letter, written by a woman who was hoping. The woman who was hoping is gone. She left this kitchen 10 minutes ago. What is in the box is a record. Someone else will hand it to you, not me. Misuk nodded. She understood. Whatever else the woman was, she understood the grammar of a closed door. Hannah stepped back from the island. She looked at her clutch. She looked at the far pantry door in the north wall. She looked at the woman on the stool with the pearl in her hand. She had reached the bottom of the room. There was nothing else to say inside it. Anything more would be repetition. And Hannah had learned, from 12 months of the same smile, what repetition was worth. She lifted her hand from the marble. She took one long breath in and let it out slow, the way she had been trained to breathe, 3 weeks ago, by a woman in a blue paper gown at Mount Sinai, who had shown her a small flickering star on a screen and called it a heartbeat. Then she said the last sentence. You will never meet him. Misuk flinched. It was the first involuntary movement of her entire body since the grand foyer. A shoulder jump, a cheek twitch, a wet blink. You will never meet him, Hannah repeated. You will not stand in a doorway in January. You will not hold him at a christening. You will not sign a card at a birthday. You will not attend a graduation. You will not sit in a pew at a wedding. You will not be in a photograph he keeps. You will not be a name in a story he tells. You will be a woman who once served me chrysanthemum tea and shouted a sentence in a kitchen, and that is all. That is the inheritance you get. That is the ledger I close. She let the words rest. That is the room you built. The stool did not creak. Misuk did not move. Her hand stayed at her throat. The pearl was warm, her skin colder now. Hannah waited 1 beat, 2 beats, 3. She was giving the older woman the last available window. A single word could still change the geometry of the night. An apology, a retraction, a sentence Misuk was allowed to speak with her son's name in it. Misuk opened her mouth. She closed it. She did not use his name. And behind the pantry door, in the smallest possible motion, a handle turned. The handle turned the whole way, and the pantry door opened without sound. Min-jae stepped into the kitchen the way a man walks into water he already knows is cold. He did not slam, he did not stride. He crossed the tile in 4 measured steps, keeping his hands loose at his sides, keeping his face composed. His eyes were another matter. His eyes had already gone somewhere Misuk could not follow him. Hannah did not turn to him. She had heard the handle. She stayed where she was, 3 feet from the island, one hand back on the marble, the other at her side. Mi-suk stood up from the stool. She stood the way a woman stands when the room she designed has just betrayed her. Spine straight, chin up, the pearl at her throat perfectly seated now. Her hand went out toward her son on instinct, the way it must have gone out 1,000 times when he was 7 and coming in from rain. Min-jae walked past that hand. He walked past it without a glance, without a pause, without contempt. He simply did not see it. He crossed to Hannah and stopped at her left shoulder and reached down and took her hand in his. He laced his fingers through hers slowly, one by one, the way a man ties a knot he intends to hold. Then he turned and looked at his mother. "How long have you been standing there?" Mi-suk said. Not a question, a calculation done out loud. "Long enough," he said. The 2 words landed in the room like a small stone into deep water. Mi-suk watched the ripples move outward across her floor. "Min-jae," she began. "Don't." Her mouth closed on his name. She had spent an hour refusing to say it. Now he had refused to hear it. A trade. He looked at the ceiling for a moment, not searching for words but locating them, the way a man locates a switch in a dark room he knows well. When he spoke, his voice was low, even, the voice he used at a table when the table was going to move, whether the men at it liked the movement or not. "I entered the pantry when I heard you send the girls out," he said. "You have never in my life sent the whole house out of a room. I was already suspicious. I have been suspicious for months." He paused. "Milan was mentioned to me in June, by a friend of yours, a galleryist. She thought I knew. I did not know. I began to listen after that." Mi-suk's hand went to the pearl. She caught herself and lowered the hand. "Busan," Min-jae said. "You said Busan tonight. You said a good doctor. You said 6 weeks. You said a decision would be made about the pregnancy after she was told, gently, that the pregnancy was already unwell. Those are the words you used. In this kitchen, in front of my wife." Mi-suk opened her mouth. He raised one finger, not high, just enough. She closed her mouth. "You said a black heir would not be permitted," he continued. "You said yes to a January that will not come. You said you kept a girl in reserve for me since I was 17. His mouth thinned. "I would like her name, later, not now. Min-jae. I am not finished." Hannah's fingers tightened once in his, and then relaxed. A small signal. He heard it. He did not soften. He simply kept his voice at the level he had chosen. "You told a woman standing in your kitchen that you would remove her child from her body," he said. "You told her this while wearing an apron you tied over silk. You told her this while a kettle was still warm. You believed I was somewhere else in the house. You believed she was alone with you." He looked at his mother now, with something that was not anger and not grief. Something colder than both. "You were wrong on all 3 counts." Mi-suk sat down, not on the stool, on the low bench along the wall, the one where the maids set trays. She had not sat there in 20 years. She sat there now because her knees would not carry the rest of what was coming to her. "From this moment on," Min-jae said, "my wife and my child are my only family." The sentence went into the wall and stayed there. Mi-suk made a small sound, not a sob, a syllable that did not become a word. She stood up again. She crossed to him in 3 quick, uneven steps and reached for his sleeve. Not his hand, his sleeve, the way a woman reaches for the last piece of cloth of a man leaving a room forever. He looked down at her fingers on the black wool. He did not remove them. He did not tolerate them. He waited. His stillness was worse than any pull would have been. "Min-jae," she said, "I am sorry. I am sorry. I am sorry." 3 times. The way she had said the number 3 when she had counted her own vetoes. The way she had rehearsed apologies for other people to give her, in other rooms, on other nights. He waited. "I did not know how to," She broke off. She tried again. I was afraid of a room in 10 years I could not answer for. I told her. She said it back to me. She said I was describing a room I had built. I did not want to believe her. Her voice cracked once, cleanly, like porcelain. I would like to unhear 162. I cannot. Hannah did not look at her. Please, Mi-suk said. Please. Min-jae lifted his own hand and, with 2 fingers, lifted his mother's hand off his sleeve. He set it down at her side, the way a man sets down a cup he does not intend to drink from. He did not squeeze it. He did not stroke it. He released it and let it fall. Then he turned his back on her. He turned his back on his mother in the room she had designed, in front of the wife she had tried to send to Busan, and he did it without ceremony. He did it the way a door closes when the man on the other side is not coming back. Hannah moved for the first time. She walked to the far corner of the island. She picked up her clutch. She opened it. She took out the ivory box with the mother-of-pearl trim. She set the box on the marble beside the checkbook. She opened the lid. She lifted the folded note off the top of the ultrasound. She refolded the note once, along the same crease she had pressed 4 times last week, and slid it into the inside pocket of her clutch, the pocket with the zipper. She closed the box. She left it there. The ultrasound stayed inside. She looked at Mi-suk. She did not speak. Mi-suk looked at the closed box on the marble. She understood what had just been done. The picture stayed. The words she had almost earned were leaving in a leather pocket, going out the door with a woman who would not be back. Min-jae took Hannah's hand again. They walked out of the kitchen the way they had come in, only slower, and in the correct order this time. Hannah first, Min-jae second. He did not close the service door behind him. He left it open. He left the checkbook open. He left the kettle on the range. He left the apron over the silk. He left his mother standing. They crossed the hall with the 4 black and white photographs of the 4 Kang men. He did not look at them. Hannah's heels made no sound on the runner. In the rotunda, under the twin staircases, Bok-nam was waiting. She had a small linen napkin folded in her hand for no reason at all. Her eyes were on the floor. Then her eyes were on Hannah's face for 1 beat. Then on the floor again. Hannah stopped. She let go of Min-jae's hand. She stepped to Bok-nam. She lifted the older woman's hand off the linen and held it. Not long. 2 seconds. She said nothing. Bok-nam's mouth moved once and did not make a word. Hannah nodded. She took Min-jae's hand again. They walked out under the marble portico. The light had turned. Late afternoon had given up its yellow and settled into the long, low gold that this driveway got, once a day, for maybe 20 minutes. The black sedan waited at the base of the steps. The driver stood by the rear passenger door. He had been standing there long enough that his shadow had moved a foot across the gravel. Min-jae opened the door himself. He put his hand at the small of Hannah's back as she bent to sit, and then, at the last moment, he moved that hand to her belly. Not a display, not for anyone at the windows, for himself. He kept it there until she was fully in. Then he got in beside her. The driver closed the door. Neither of them looked back at the house. The car pulled away. Gravel under the tires. Then asphalt. Then the wrought iron gate opening and receding. Hannah exhaled. It was the first true exhale of the day. Her shoulders came down 1/2 inch and stayed there. Min-jae watched her from the side. "I owe you a year," he said quietly. "You gave me a year," she said. "You just gave me the rest of my life." "That squares it." He almost smiled. Almost. "There is a note," he said, glancing at the clutch on her lap. There was. He nodded once. He understood. He did not ask to read it. He turned his eyes to the window. Inside the kitchen, Mi-suk had not moved. She was still standing beside the low bench. Her hands were open at her sides. Her chignon was intact. The pearl at her throat was seated. The apron was still tied. Her face wore nothing. Boknam appeared in the service doorway. She had waited exactly as long as her 38 years in the house told her to wait. She entered without asking permission. She crossed to the island. She saw the ivory box. She saw the open checkbook. She saw the pen laid on the wrong side of the sleeve. She registered these things and made a decision. She picked up the ivory box. She carried it in both hands, the way she had carried the household ledger to Mi-suk for 30 years, and she brought it to her. "Madam," she said, "nothing else." Mi-suk took the box. Her fingers were slow. She lifted the lid. Inside, on a small square of white tissue paper, was one printed image, 3 inches by 3 inches, gray and black, a curved shape inside a darker curve, a tiny bright point where the machine had marked the heart. Along the top border, in tiny type, read Hannah. Along the bottom border, 7W0D.162 BPM. Mi-suk looked at it for a long time. She turned the box over. Along the underside of the lid, engraved by hand into the ivory, in fine script, "For the grandmother we hoped would love our baby." The reading took less than 3 seconds. The consequence took the rest of her life. Mi-suk's knees folded and she went down beside the bench, one hand still on the box, the other flat against the tile. She did not weep decoratively. She wept the way an old wall weeps when it finally lets water through, quietly, from a crack no one had marked, and once it started, it did not stop. Boknam did not move to lift her. Boknam sat down on the low bench and put her weathered hand on the back of her employer's neck and left it there. That was all. In the study at the far end of the house, the study Mi-suk's late husband had used, and Min-jae had inherited but rarely entered, a lamp came on later that same evening, remotely. Then a printer. Then a call to a lawyer whose family had served the Kangs for 2 generations and would now serve 1. Min-jae did not go home first. He took Hannah to the apartment they still kept in the city, walked her upstairs, made her tea she barely touched, and sat with her on the couch until her breath was even. Then, at 9:40, he went to the study downtown in the same suit he had worn all day, sat at his father's desk, and signed the papers his lawyer had drawn while they drove. The papers moved his personal fortune, every account bearing only his name, into an irrevocable instrument. They moved the legitimate Kang holdings under his direct control, the 2 commercial towers in Midtown, the block in Long Island City, the import logistics arm out of Newark, the vineyard in Sonoma the family had bought in 2004, under the same instrument. He did not touch the parts of the empire his father had left in trust to his mother. Those he left to her untouched for her lifetime. Everything else he moved. The instrument had a name. He had chosen the name in the car, silently, somewhere between the gate and the parkway. He wrote it at the top of the first page in his own hand before initialing. Parker Kang Legacy Trust. Beneficiary, Hannah Reed Parker, spouse. Beneficiary, the minor child of Hannah Reed Parker and Kang Min-jae, in utero and any subsequent issue. Grantor, Kang Min-jae. There was a line for a witness, his lawyer signed. There was a line for a second witness. A junior associate, waiting in the hallway with a cup of cold coffee, was brought in. She signed, she left. She did not know what she had signed. Min-jae sat for a moment with the pen in his hand. Then he wrote a second document, shorter, on a single sheet, in Korean and in English. It named his mother. It named the Milan galleryist. It named the Busan family that owed a favor of 2 generations. It named the girl in reserve, whose name he had, in the end, remembered from a photograph he was shown at 18 and had never asked to see again. The document instructed his lawyer that if anything happened to him or to his wife or to the child, by any means, ever, these 4 names would be delivered, along with a full accounting, to 3 separate parties: an investigative reporter he trusted, a prosecutor in Seoul who owed no favors to anyone, and a family attorney unaffiliated with the Kang firm. He signed that one too. He sealed it. He handed the envelope to his lawyer. His lawyer put it in a safe that had been in the office since 1978. Then Min-jae went home. Hannah was asleep on the couch with her hand still on her belly. He carried her to the bed. She half woke and asked what time it was. He said, "It doesn't matter anymore." She smiled without opening her eyes and slept. 3 weeks later, they moved into a house in Connecticut that Min-jae had bought quietly 2 months earlier, without telling anyone, in the name of the trust. It had a garden. It had a room with a north-facing window that Hannah, walking through it, had already begun to sketch on the back of a receipt. On the last Sunday of that October, in the low gold light Hannah had come to love, she stood in that garden with her hand on the small round beginning of her belly. Min-jae stood beside her. He had taken off the wedding band once, in the study, to look at the engraving on the inside and put it back on. He did not take it off again. The koi at his throat caught the light for a second, and then did not. Hannah leaned her head against his shoulder. Neither spoke. Back in the Kang mansion, in a room Mi-suk did not enter anymore, the ivory box sat on a shelf beside a low lamp. The lid was closed. The engraving faced the wall. Bok-nam dusted the shelf every Tuesday and did not open it. Mi-suk had not asked her to. Mi-suk had not asked her anything since that evening. Some mornings, Mi-suk sat in the sitting room where the album had been opened and did not open the album. Some evenings, she stood at the window and watched a driveway. No black sedan ever came up again. She had rejected the baby for the color of his skin, and, in that same instant, she had handed the entire empire to the heir she tried to deny. She would live another 23 years in that house. She would sign nothing of importance in any of them. The name on the papers that mattered was already, by then, Parker Kang. And in a garden 2 hours away, on a Sunday in October, a woman with a hand on her belly and a man with a hand over hers stood in the light for as long as the light lasted and did not once look back. If you want to watch all the stories without any ads and also get access to bonus scenes, extended epilogues, and exclusive spicy chapters, head over to our Patreon. Scan the QR code on the screen. The link is in the description or in the pinned comment. See you there. If this story moved you, stop for a moment and reflect. Have you ever walked into a house that smiled at you for a whole year, only to discover the smile was a strategy to push you out? Have you ever protected a child, still unborn, from words spoken by the very family that should have been the first to love him? And when the truth was finally said out loud, in a room where you were meant to be alone, did someone you love step out of the shadows and choose you? Tell us your experiences and feelings in the comments. We read them all. And if you believe in stories about dignity, motherhood, and legacy, leave a like, be sure to subscribe to the channel, and click join to become a part of our community and help the channel.